Mr. Lindsay. Mr. Pennings. Mr. Laster.
Present.
Mr. Beaver. Ms. Parker. Mr. Moore.
Here.
Mr. Morrison is here. Ms. Powers. Ms. Martin is here. Mr. Bates.
Here.
And Mr. Dudley.
Here.
We have 8 present, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chairman. All right, at this time, we're going to go ahead and say the Pledge of Allegiance, and then we will have a moment of silence thereafter. Thank you. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Once again, we appreciate everyone coming out tonight. We appreciate your attendance. First item on the agenda, we need to adopt an agenda. We have a proposed agenda that's in front of us. There is one change. We had one item under instruction, the request to waive the TCAP score and final grade. Since that does require a policy change, we're going to remove that from the agenda, and that will be heard at the next policy meeting. Does anyone else have any other additions or changes to the agenda before we vote on it? Hearing none, I'll ask for a motion to approve the agenda as revised. Motion by Mr. Dudley. Do I have a second? Second by Mr. Moore. Is there any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, we're ready to vote. And that motion passes. All right, next item on the agenda, we have recognitions and announcements. Do we have any announcements or recognitions, Mr. Director?
Thank you much, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to formally welcome Dr. Alice Berkins. If you'd please stand, Dr. Berkins. I know it's really comfortable for you. She's our new interim manager of finance and payroll. I'd like to welcome Dr. Berkins to the job. I'd also like to make 1 second. Today we learned, I think October 22nd, the governor has officially proclaimed October as National Principal Month. So to all the principals in the room, congratulations. Governor Haslam has recognized you.
Thank you, Mr. Director. All right, now moving on, we're ready for the Maury County Education Association. Is anyone here from the association that would like to talk? Seeing none, we'll move to the next item, public delegations. If I could ask one of the officers to look to see if anyone signed up to talk to us today. Okay, thank you. Moving on to the next item, we have the consent items. Everyone got the agenda, and you see all the items that are on the consent agenda. Does anyone want to remove any of those items to vote on separately? Seeing none, I entertain a motion to approve the consent items. Motion by Mr. Pennings.
Second.
Second by Mr. Moore. Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, we're ready to vote. All right, that motion and those items pass. Next item, new business. We have E-Rate Central. Mr. Tommy Schuler.
Hey, good evening, everybody. This is on there basically because, as I've explained to Mr. Bates, we're getting audited. We're in the middle of audit. At the time that I put it on the agenda, I could not find where it spoke about E-Rate and where we talked about our policy for internet safety. And so I'm just going to briefly, what E-rate is regulated by the federal government, the FCC. They pay for our bills as a school district by your free and reduced percentage. So part of the job that I get to do is I get to figure, working with food service and attendance, and find out what our free and reduced is. I do all the paperwork. I turn it into federal government. And basically, Maury County Public Schools this year, we're at 80% free and reduced. And what happens is, so for example, our internet bill and our phone bill, let's say it's $1.2 million, we pay 20% of that. So what's happened is that we're in the middle of an audit. It's, as Dr. Marzak was on a call with me the other day, it's just random. It was just our time. They make sure that we're doing what we say we're going to be doing. SIPA, which is the Child Internet Protection Act, basically says if a child tries to go somewhere on the internet, do we have a filter in place to stop it? And we do. And so their obligation is, do you have a meeting? Is it in public? Do you talk about E-rate? Do you talk about how you have a filter? You know, if somebody asks you a question, could you answer it? And I put that on here. On October 22nd, 2013, we actually reviewed that policy. So that policy's been reviewed, and that would have covered our obligation to the E-rate auditor, but I couldn't find it at the time, so to be safe, I put it on there. Does anybody have any questions for me?
And so basically, this is a mandate that we talk about this periodically just to ensure that we do have some procedures in place to try to protect children.
That's correct, and that's voiced in a public way.
Okay. And do you need a actual vote on that? I
Do
see that
not.
there's
It is not a vote. It's just
Okay.
FYI. Sorry, at the time, I was just kind of like, and it's not Shirley's fault, it's my fault. I said, please get it on there. I don't know what I need to do, and that's kind of a crazy deal, but it's just FYI. I'm sorry.
All right. Well, I'm going to open the floor. Does anyone have any questions? Seeing none, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Next item on the agenda, we have the committee reports. First item up, Zoning Facility Committee, Chair Moore. Mr. Moore, I think we just got through finished with your committee. Do you have a report or any recommendations for us?
Thank you, Chairman Bates. Yes, we did wrap up that meeting. We had several reports from Architect. Again, these are all in the packet, including Central High School, the process on that, the progress on that, the train report, as well as our progress in that area. We do have two bids that are up for, that the committee has approved, we do recommend to the full board, one being bid number 16014. It is for the Facilities Assessment Service through EMG, including the School Dude software and setup to accompany that, and that is for a total of $140,000, $140,195 even. There was a second bid, which is exterior door replacement at Highland Park Elementary School, and that is 3 exterior doors and the accessories necessary to replace those, and that is for a total of $2,950 even. And that's all we covered.
Thank you, Mr. Moore. Does anyone want to discuss those items separately? All right, so we have the recommendation for the committee for those two particular bids that Mr. Moore just reviewed and went over with us. Is there any discussion on that recommendation? Hearing none, we're ready to vote to approve the committee and adopt the committee's recommendation of those two bids. And that recommendation is approved and ratified by the board. Any other reports, Chair Moore?
No, sir.
Okay. Moving on, we're down to the Budget Committee. There's nothing really to report at this time, other than during the retreat, we discussed that we're going to start the budget process probably in January. One of the first items we're going to do in January is to just take a look at our budget. We're going to study our budget, make sure that we understand our budget. We're probably going to do that in January, and then February we're going to start a process of trying to prioritize what the needs of our school system are so that we can start putting together a draft budget. So we're going to start that early in the year. Next item, we're going to move on to Policy Committee. Chair Parker is not present, so Vice Chair Jones, Mr. Lassiter.
Thank you. Again, the information is in your packet. As you can see, that the first group is that we've got final adoption of proposed changes, 3.60 on through 3.216. So entertain, well, no, that came from the committee, so we don't need a motion.
All right, let's go ahead and take up the final adoption, if we are going to take final adoption on policy 3.600, the changes to the insurance management policy. And that's the only thing that I see in my agenda. Is there another adoption that we're making?
Is this carried on?
This is just a
Okay.
post.
All right, sorry.
Okay. All right, so it looks like we have one item from the committee for final approval. That did come from the committee, so we don't need a second. Is there any discussion on the proposed changes to policy 3.600? Seeing none, we're ready to vote. All right, let the record reflect that that passes, so that recommendation is adopted and approved as the action of this board. Next item, Mr. Lassiter, looks like you all have some proposed changes that you all are just wanting to post until the next meeting. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. 3.209 through 3.216.
All right, is there any discussion on that recommendation of the committee to post these proposed changes until the next meeting to vote on? Seeing none, we're ready to vote. All right, so that recommendation is adopted and approved to post those policy changes to the next meeting. Next item, looks like we have a resolution, or proposed resolution for the committee to the General Assembly and the State Board. Mr. Lassiter.
Yes, those in attendance at the committee meeting also passed a resolution on curriculum and whatnot to go to the General Assembly. That's also in your board packet. Any questions on that?
All right, open the floor for any discussion on the resolution. Mr. Morrison.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I wasn't able to attend the policy meeting that evening for other commitments, but I am interested with the construction of the resolution. Are the recommendations contained in this based on data? Are they based on recommendations of professionals? Or how do we come about these recommendations?
Thank you, Mr. Morrison. I'll be happy to discuss that, as I proposed the resolution to the committee based upon some of the concerns that were expressed by some of the parents that we heard at some of the prior board meetings. And so what our committee did, the first thing we looked at is what can we as a board, what do we have control over? What is our authority? And then second, do we have concerns as a board, and do we wish to express those concerns to the General Assembly? And so during the committee, one of the items we looked at, we've heard we've heard some people say that the local schools control curriculum. And so that sounds great. So we wanted to look into what the state laws were on that particular matter. But unfortunately, when we reviewed the state laws, the only thing that we could find talks about the state's power over curriculum. Now, some of those laws are actually quoted in the resolution, but I'll briefly go over some of those laws that we went over. The first one that we went over was 49.1302. And in that particular policy, or that particular statute, and we actually looked at the statutes. We had the presentation where we could look at the actual language of those statutes. And we saw that it was the State Board of Education which has the power, and I'm skipping through to number 8, quote, to set policies governing all curricula and courses of study in the public schools. And also, it's the State Board of Education has the power to prescribe the use of textbooks and other instructional materials. So looking at that particular, where the General Assembly has said that that is the entity that sets policies regarding curriculum, we looked at that particular State Board of Education, what policies they have passed. And some of the policies that we looked at actually their state policy 3.200, their curriculum frameworks, and we actually looked at the actual language where it says, quote, "The State Board of Education shall adopt a curriculum framework for each subject area, grades K through 12. These frameworks shall contain the broad goals and objectives which identify the minimum content required at each grade level and for each course." So that was actual policy of the state board, that they are the ones that determine what the minimum content is regarding curriculum. We also looked at some of the regulations of that state board. We looked at their regulation 3.05, and we saw that their regulation actually specifically says that all the textbooks in Tennessee have to be aligned to their curriculum. And one of the things that was interesting that we found as a committee when we looked at some of the state laws, there's actually a statute on the books that says that the teacher or the principal can actually be fined by the state if they do not use the state's textbooks. So puts the poor teachers in an awkward position. They get and the school systems get a lot of negativity sometimes regarding the textbooks, but the state actually says that those teachers and those principals can be fined if they use a textbook that is not approved by the state. So looking at all that particular authority as far as what the statutes were, I also got input of Mr. Walliver prior to the committee meeting to see if we were missing anything to discuss, and Mr. Walliver is here. He can give feedback on that, but that's what the laws appear to the committee, that it looks like the state is the one that has the authority. If parents or anybody, even if it's the board, has an issue regarding a particular content that's being taught, that we have to talk to the state about that to maybe change some of those things. So we then, with that understanding, we looked at the particular textbooks that some of the parents have raised issues with. We had the actual 6th grade and 7th grade teacher's edition of the textbooks there at the committee. And we actually looked at those in very great detail. And in looking at that, I think the committee had a concern that while we understand that as part of history, it's necessary to talk about religion. You can't talk about history if you do not include religion, because it's had such an impact on historical events. And it continues to impact the world today. But what our surprise was when we as a committee examined the textbooks, we were surprised to see how in-depth that the state requires schools to go into the particular content of the religions, not just to talk about the religion and, okay, this particular religion started impacting world history. It actually goes in great depth to the particular content or the tenets of those religions. And this is not picking on any one religion. When we looked at all the religions, the state textbooks and the state curriculum actually goes in pretty great detail with a lot of the religions. And so from a committee standpoint, while we understood that, yes, it's necessary to talk about religion in the context of history, is it necessary for that purpose to go that in depth into the content or the tenets of that particular religion? And so while we felt that it may be good to learn about religion, we felt that if the state is going to continue to require school systems to go that in depth, that it may be more age appropriate to do that in a high school level. Because what we're talking about 6th and 7th grade, and some of the members of this board actually have children in that age group, and we know how impressionable kids are during that age. They haven't fully formed their own opinions about the world yet. They haven't really figured out who they are yet. And so is that the appropriate time to be hitting them with that much information, that intense information as far as the particular content of religions? Maybe it's better to wait, if the state is going to require that to be taught, maybe it's better to wait until the high school level when the kids are actually, they've kind of developed opinions of their own, and they've kind of developed who they are, and they can talk about those things, and that may be good to talk about those things. But we as a committee also felt that if that is going to occur, that should be in the context of a comparative religion type study where the kids can learn about different religions all at the same time and talk about those things. But we also felt as a committee, and that's part of the resolution, that that ought to be optional. If a parent wants their children to learn that much in depth about religions, that's great. But that ought to be optional to those particular parents and the students, whether they do that or not. So that's what the resolution does. It's communication and expression of this board to the State Board of Education as well as the General Assembly that, hey, if you all are mandating these things that we have to be taught, we think that as far as the particular in-depth of the content or the tenets, that ought to be, if the state is going to insist upon that, that ought to be at this high school level, and also that should be in a comparative religion study that's optional to the students and the parents. And so that's what the resolution proposes.
Well, and certainly I understand the laws governing how and what we teach and why we teach and what we're required to teach. And as has been since my first meeting and since being involved with the school board, if this will of the board is to do this, I will support it after the vote is taken. But I have to say that if this resolution is not based on data or professional recommendations based on students' learning and the effects of this on students, I have a hard time supporting it, because we always talk about being data-driven in everything that we do. And to me, and this is just my opinion, it sounds as though this is based largely on feelings. And if we're data-driven, feelings don't have a place. Thank you.
Any other discussion?
Well, I agree with Mr. Morrison on data-driven, but we also work for the parents of this community in this county. And what I got the feeling from most parents and from some of the teachers, that yes, we have to teach this, but like the resolution says, and in my own personal opinion, I think the book is inappropriate for the age group it's being taught to. And that's just my opinion.
Mr. Dudley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, I've been torn ever since all this controversy first started. But year after year, we hear that our students are so much brighter than what they were years ago. And so, I'm sure there's some in the public that don't want some of these items covered at any age level. They feel like it's not the business of the State Department of Education to require it anywhere. But at the same time, Governor Haslam has pointed out some of her concerns that we want to teach this at the lower levels, but I think we need for our students to have an understanding of why some of these changes and things occurred. So I agree with Mr. Morrison. I would like things to be data-driven, but at the same time, I think if our parents would actually take the time to teach their child at home some of the things, and now I think our youth can handle a lot more at a younger age than what they could years ago, provided they had the proper guidance and assistance from the parents.
Any other discussion? I guess as far as, also want to add, at the committee level, we had the textbooks there. And so we spent some time, everybody had access to look at the state textbooks. And as far as a data-driven standpoint, the way I look at data is facts, okay? And so we looked at what the facts were. We looked at the facts of what those textbooks did provide. And so it's up for this board to then, based upon those facts, to make a determination. Do we as a community, do we as a school system, do we as a board, based upon those facts, do we feel that it's appropriate in 6th and 7th grade to require our students to learn that much in depth about any particular religion in the context of history? Again, the resolution does not ask that the state not teach history. The resolution does not ask that the state not mention or talk about religion in the context of history. But it's one thing to talk about that, okay, this religious group developed during this time period and then started affecting historical events thereafter. That's one thing, okay? But it's quite another thing to then pause and then say, now let's not just learn about those events, let's learn about what those particular tenets of those particular religions are. And that's across the board. When we looked at the textbooks, we didn't look at one particular religion. We went and looked at all the particular religions, and it was consistent that throughout, with each particular religion, there was a substantial amount of time that was spent on that. And again, that's not, from a data standpoint or from an educational standpoint, the resolution is not saying that that's not appropriate to learn about. What the resolution says is that we respect the concerns of our parents, that we can respect the concerns of our community, we respect the concerns of our teachers who are being put in this awkward position, to that, hey, maybe that's not the best time to be talking with kids in 6th and 7th grade that in depth. Why don't we wait until the high school level? So it's not asking that the state do away with anything. All it's doing is that we're listening to our community, and we're listening to our parents, and we're trying to do something that we think benefits everybody. Benefits education, it benefits data. We want our kids to learn, but we're trying to do it in a thoughtful, respectful, and intelligent manner. So that's what the resolution asks to do.
I think to echo that a little bit, if this resolution had come forward and said, we're just not going to teach this stuff in this county, I wouldn't support this. If it had come forward and made demands that were not in some way data-driven, or that were just completely a group of people deciding this is what we want to do regardless of what's going on, I wouldn't support that either. But what I see in front of us is a resolution that is, again, respectfully asking the state to reconsider how they laid this out and at what age level they laid this information out. And I think that is, in my view, is going towards a data-driven answer. It's asking the state to go back to when they put this together. Just again, these standards are just a little over a year and a half old. To go back and look at this and say, maybe you didn't get this quite right. And maybe we should look at adjusting some of these things. And I think, again, listening to our parents, listening to teachers and other professionals have all said that something's just not quite right with the way this is laid out. And this is a respectful way. I think this is an appropriate way for us as a board to go to the state and just say, hey, can you take another look at this? And we would ask that you take a look for this. So again, in that light, I definitely support the way this is laid out.
Mr. Pennings.
And I'll just say this for the parents out there or for anybody else. I went to Catholic school for 8 years, and I looked at the book that Mr. Bates brought for teaching the Catholic religion in the 6th grade. I went to Catholic school for 8 years, and I went into more in depth than my 8 years of Catholic school did. So it's not just the Islam or any other religion. All the religions went into that kind of depth. And I agree with Mr. Bates that history is fine, but teaching religion should be led up to preachers and parents.
Any other discussion? Okay. Here. Seeing none, we're ready to vote on the resolution. And that motion passes. The resolution does pass. All right, next item on the agenda is the community relations. Of course, Ms. Powers is not here, and Mr. Beaver's not here. So we'll try to take that up the best we can. Out of the Community Relations Committee, they had a recommendation to move forward with the website proposal. And Ms. Johnson, maybe you can kind of chime in on this. Attachment number 7, is this the proposal for the website? Okay. Okay. And so the total amount is for the website is it $21,356.50?
Yes.
All right. The director has verified that. So I guess as far as the committee's proposal, the other thing we have to discuss is, do we have available funds? Do we have a current budget where these funds would come out, or do we need to have a discussion about where the available funds would come from?
I'm not aware of that. That'd really probably be an answer that. We can't, with our change in budget people, folks with budget, I'm unaware that any money was budgeted for that, but I'm not sure.
All right, so I guess the alternative would be we would have to remove funds from fund balance then in order to fund this. All right, so what's the will of the board? Do you all want to take this up tonight, or do you all want to have this heard at the next meeting when we can have a little bit better understanding of where the funding would come from? Mr. Dudley.
Mr. Chairman, I would prefer putting it off till we get a little better explanation, because the final sheet in my packet of attachment 7 says total due $41,996.50. So that's,
I think I can explain that part of it. My understanding, the committee was looking at some different company firms that do this, and what they landed on, the firm that they were most comfortable with was Sharp School. During that time period, Sharp School was bought by a company called School Messenger that we already do business with. It's who we use. That's the program we use for our notifications. It sends out district-wide emails, district-wide phone calls. We can do those by school, and it's a program that we want to continue to use. So in the negotiation, they said, we will bundle this for you and give you a better price on School Messenger and a better price on Sharp School if you do it that way. Well, we realized that this exceeded the $10,000 threshold. And so we said, unless this has already been bid by another district, we would have to bid this. And so I guess that's where we got involved, and that's why I know about this, because the purchasing stuff comes through our office. So what happened is we went back to them and said, has this already been bid? And we found out that Anderson County School District had already bid this package with Sharp School, and so they offered to allow us to use their bid. So the pricing for Sharp School comes from the bid from Anderson County, but the bundling comes from the fact that School Messenger said, we'll bundle this and give you a better deal on School Messenger if you'll buy these two together. So the total is for the website development plus the renewal of School Messenger. It is time for us. School Messenger is due to renew this month. As a matter of fact, if you'll look down later in the bids, because we knew we needed to renew it, we put it there as well, because if for some reason this doesn't pass this evening, we'll need to go ahead and approve just the renewal of of School Messenger, because it's due this month. Otherwise, we will no longer be able to use it.
And so roughly how much would we save if we went forward tonight and we bundled versus we end up paying for something we already have right now? Just roughly.
I've got it right here.
11,423.
What's the difference?
Because the bid that I'm looking at the separate bid, Mr. Breeden, that I'm looking at is for school messengers, 21,121.60. Now, that's separate, if we handle it separate. But if we bundle.
That is correct.
We can get that for,
It's the price there is in your proposal. Do you have that proposal in front of you? I'll have to pull that up. Well, if you go back to the beginning, the first page of that has the price for school messenger. It's either first or second page. Okay. So we would save 20,640, we'd save, roughly $500 on the school messenger program alone. No, that's total price for the district.
all right, just real quick, I'm gonna open the floor up for discussion just a moment, just so we know definitively, if we, the proposal that we have, attachment 7, the 41,996.50 is the messenger and the 22 websites.
That's correct, yes, sir.
Okay. And if we just do just the website separately, that's what's the 21,356.50.
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right, open the floor, Mr. Dudley.
Well, just, first off, this goes back to some issues we've had earlier in the year, of why the renewal of these contracts seem to sneak up on us. It just seemed like contract after contract, it's brought to our attention at the last minute that, hey, this is coming up, and we haven't had an opportunity to do any prior research as to whether we want to continue with a particular firm or if we want to put it out for bids again and all. So I'm still disappointed that these renewals sneak up on us. I've been pushing that we improve our website capabilities or appearances system-wide. And so I have attended a committee meeting or two in regard to that, and I do feel like we need something compatible system-wide. I know that each individual schools wants to show some individual things, and we don't want it to look exactly like the other. So I understand each school wanting some individual stuff, but at the same time, our parents should have a system that if they've got a student at 3 different schools, the ability to get in and work their way through a particular website should be similar and not completely foreign to each other. And so will this school, this contract do that?
To the meetings that I was involved and the things that I saw, it's obviously it's going to be an improvement to what we have. What we have now is the best that we can do. There's a lot more functionality. I'm not exactly specifically, what kind of options you're looking for, but it's definitely an improvement with the things that can, the company actually has, experience with what people like to see and easy to navigate and templates where they can be easier manipulated than the software that we currently use now. So, in my opinion, and I guess the committee's also, is that yes, it's going to be a big improvement as far as ease of use and being able to find things.
Yep. And I'll also, Mr. Dudley, I was at the meeting and we had a recommendation to possibly consider moving with a local company to do this. And it was my recommendation to go ahead and move ahead with Sharp School. The research that I had done is our parents are going to have a consistent layout across the entire district for websites. There will be some opportunity for individual flair to be added in, but this is going to be consistent. And because it's now owned by School Messenger, it's going to have an integrated feature with that as well. And going back to what I remember and having a conversation with Mr. Gaines, I don't believe this would be before you today if we didn't have the money to put it into play. I understand that we had talked about before this budget cycle that we had to move into a new website. So I believe money had been put into a placeholder to reserve spot for a website, and I believe it covers the cost of this together, added together.
Okay. School messenger is something I think our parents want and like. But some of I've had more complaints in this school year from the parents saying that they're more confused when they get some of these messages than what their fears or alarms are about their students. Who reviews or comes up with the exact wording of the messages that we send out?
That's,
If it's at the school level, the principal does it. If it's at the district level, I've sent out a couple school messages, and I automatically work with Kim Doddridge to make sure that it's clear and to the point. But I would recommend that if we have parents that are concerned, I'm going to be starting up a PTO council where I'm going to be meeting with the PTO presidents of every single school quarterly. I would say please get those concerns to your PTO representative, and then please bring that to the council, and we can talk about it, and we can get a little bit more in the weeds about it.
Okay. Well, I mean, basically, the parents say that they become aware that there's a system at a problem or an issue at a particular school. But the directives or what we're asking the parents to do in regard to it is all confusing.
Okay.
We don't know, we don't go on to explain that a particular facility is under lockdown, and then we're requesting that the parents do not come and pick up your students, that the students are safe and everything, and then other times when we feel like they're needing to be picked up, that's not relayed. So like I say, I think we need to put some effort into the wording of these messages and all, but I am for the system. I think the parents do want a notification system, but we just have to have somebody that is reviewing what message is sent, and some of it I think could be pre-studied. We could say, okay, this is a type of incident that we have going on at a particular school, and so when that occurs, this is the message that will be sent out.
We can work on that.
And also, I've had more complaints just saying from the parents saying they're just confused. They don't know what to do. And so that just adds to their anxiety about the kids. I do think the website improvement along, I know different companies said that they could do both services, and so I'm certainly not opposed to that.
And Mr. Dudley, just to touch on what you said earlier, we were well aware of getting School Messenger by itself to you guys earlier, but with it being bundled and us having to wait and not knowing there's a cooperative agreement, but I do review it. I review the messenger service every year, and just so you guys know, one benefit that you're getting that other companies will not give us. Maury County Public Schools is guaranteed 5 minutes. If any principal, anybody calls and has to do an emergency message, they will get somebody on the phone or they start paying us money. Nobody else does that. So again, I apologize. We just tried to hold it up. Even if it is $500, we tried to save that to bundle it together, but I do apologize.
All right, Mr. Lindsay and then Mr. Moore.
I got a few things. Dr. Marzak, I'm assuming by your comment that regardless of what we as a board or individual board members think, that I take it that you're comfortable with this company. Okay. Second thing, and this, I guess this is a question for Tommy, but is it your understanding that this is just for website development? Do these dollars, and Dr. Marzak may know this too, but do these dollars have anything to do with the maintenance of these websites ongoing?
I mean, it's my understanding there is a certain amount of support built in, meaning, it's kind of the deal where once we get going and everything, that they're there for support for a certain amount, but once they get us going, train the trainer kind of deal, and that the templates that are pre-built are kind of something that to get some consistency throughout the district, which is what I think everybody was kind of looking for, the way I understand it. Kim, if you have anything to add? Okay, yeah.
So,
There is support, but the ongoing maintenance, if we're just switching out documents, changing dates, phone numbers, we would be able to do that ourselves now.
so it's my understanding that certain schools, maybe they, right now, they're responsible for maintaining their own websites.
It's board policy, yeah.
So they are, I don't know if contracted is the right word, but they have an agreement with someone that maintains that website for them. I just want to make sure that this doesn't interrupt that.
That would be a question for some of the schools. Are any of the principals like to weigh in on that?
Well, I mean, I have somebody that keeps mine updated every day. I mean, is she going away? Is she going to continue to update when I want things added to it? Who's adding to the
Well,
website?
I think that's still going to be needed. I think the question he's saying is, do you have a contract or an agreement to where if this happened, you'd still be paying somebody, but you wouldn't be getting a website? Is that correct?
Yeah, well, I just want to make sure that, one, I want to make sure that all the principals, and I hope all of you chime in, but I want to make sure that you guys are getting what you want out of this. That I don't want to spend $20,000 and then all of you guys hate it because you can't update the information as you see fit. I just want to make sure that they have that ability.
Yeah, and they will, but the beautiful part is they can add the content, they can change the data, they can add pictures, but the look will be consistent across the district. So we'll have complete autonomy and control over content. They won't have to pay for design, layout, colors. They won't have to do all of that stuff. So that'll all be taken care of. All they have to worry about is content.
So once we're up and running and they take the training wheels off, you might
Yeah.
say, then it'll be business as usual to what we're doing now.
Business as usual.
Correct.
Okay. And the last, this is just a comment, but, and somebody said it, I'm assuming that school messenger, the 20,640 was included in the budget.
That's
Because we
correct,
knew
it
that
was.
was coming.
Yes. Yeah.
So the only monies we would have to come up with is 21,356. If we can't find that, we just saved, or Mr. Breeden just saved, money as far as the facilities assessment. There's some dollars left over there. Not.
We have the money. We have
Like $50,000 that if we have to, we can go into that fund balance money and use. I think that's all I have.
Thank you, Chairman Bates. I think most of my questions in this have been answered, that we do have the funding, that our director, that was the other question, was, does the director support this move? And again, I know I've said this a million times, as a parent of 3 children at 3 different schools, having some unanimity when I go to look for information or calendars will be a blessing. I can be honest about that. So that's something as a parent I'm really looking forward to. I know, and this has been kind of drawn out over several months, but for several reasons. We first got these proposals, and we viewed the webinars where they showed us this software months ago at this point. I really think we just need to move ahead on this. We've got the money. I think it needs to happen and happen quickly. And I think our director has already said that he's committed to making, once the train, as Mr. Lindsay said, once the train wheels come off, he's committed to making this work and working with the schools to make it happen. So, thank you.
Ms. Martin.
Okay, I don't want to be a repeat offender and a repeater, but I'm with you, David, in the fact that we have really went in depth with this. And I believe that the people that have the scope of practice, Kim, you were there at the initial meeting when those people made those presentations to us via where they were from. We got those handouts. Tommy, you've been involved in this process too. So I feel like the people that definitely have that scope are giving us yeses and shaking their heads of no. You also said, Mr. Director, that you have had experience with this company. So I really think with funding and all of that being a yes, that we need to be about the business of moving in the direction that would be pretty much a positive for all the stakeholders. If we're on this green grass journey and route, Parents should not be confused. I'm not a techie. I just had to talk to Tommy about something as simple as this iPad. I feel like parents should be able to consistently view something. That those two companies have also told us that we will have opportunities to have documents for parents, ease to access those things that can be put on. I think it's kudos to the schools that have websites and things that are great, but for those schools that maybe are not up to par or up to that standard, we can move as a whole system and be on the same page. And I think that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to move together in a good direction. And I think this is what would be best for the people that are vested, which are those parents and those students and all of the community involved. So I really do think we need to move with this because it's good.
Thank you, Ms. Martin. Any other discussion?
And with Mr. Dudley on that standardized script, I know we can have some standardized scripts, but I would say, I mean, I have my school's walkie-talkie, and we all get the calls. And I think something short, sweet, and to the point has been good. But if you've got those people that are not happy, I think that if those things that we could bring to their attention and try to tweak some things. But I've really been pleased myself with the information that's been passed out.
Any other discussion? I guess I'll just note that I was a little bit concerned with the price, but when you look at the big picture, we're talking about 22 schools here for 22,000. So you basically, it's breaking down to about $1,000 per school for their website. And then two, this does have an educational component. We want our parents to be involved, and so the cleaner we can make the websites, and hopefully eventually where parents can go log on, get information about their students, that's a good thing. So any other discussion? All right, and so the proposal from, excuse me, Mr. Lindsay.
Just a point of clarification. I think we need to move forward with this, and if I understand it right, that if we bundle, we'll save $11,000. So I think it's imperative that we do it tonight. But I just want to make sure that, and I know I kind of put you on the spot, Mr. Breeden, but if we need to include in the motion that if we have to dip into that fund balance, I just want to make sure that everybody's comfortable that we have the money in place in order to save that money. And I just want to do whatever we need to do motion-wise to make sure this happens.
Thank you for bringing that up, Mr. Lindsay, because when, from a purchasing perspective, any purchases over $10,000 needs board approval. It needs approval for the purchase and approval for where the money's being spent from. That's what an auditor will look at when they come and look at our books. So we kind of need to say, take it from this or that. I mean, even if we can take from these funds if they're available or these funds if they're available. You also, I think, are required to approve the funds we're taking it from.
All right, why don't we try it this way? We've got the proposal from the committee. It's to approve the website and the school messenger as a bundle for $41,996.50. And I'm going to add to the committee's proposal that if necessary, if we don't have existing budget funds to cover that whatever the balance would be, we will take that out of fund balance in order to make it happen. Is that appropriate? Is that a good way to proceed? Yeah, it is an amendment to the committee's proposal. You'll second that? Okay. So the committee's recommendation as revised, Mr. Walliver.
I'm way out of my league here, but would that be a recurring cost that we're talking about taking out of fund balance? Is that not going to cause problems? I mean, if we're talking about moving it from an existing fund, a contingency that's left over from something that's already been budgeted, but if you're talking about fund balance or recurring expense, I don't know.
This is a recur. I mean, this is an annual cost. I mean, I guess you could say it was appropriate to take this first year cost and then the intent would be to budget it all in next year's budget. Do you think, Mr. Wolliver, that would be sufficient? I don't know. I do know that that we are by statute, I guess, not allowed to take reoccurring costs out of fund balance, and this is.
Change your maintenance of effort. So
right.
I mean, I would suggest that you identify where you want the money to come from rather than just say fund balance. It's leftover money from another project that was budgeted. But if you start talking about pulling money from fund balance to pay a recurring cost, then I think the county's going to get a little upset about that.
All right, so, Mr. Waller, how would you suggest to revise the motion on the floor?
Director's saying that he thinks the money's already been allocated in a budget line item. To the extent that it's not, you could move money from the fees that weren't used on the EMG project. That, I would say that would be a better way to structure that.
All right, so I'm going to amend if there's no objection to, let's see, who seconded that?
No objection.
All right, so if there's no objection, I'm going to amend that amendment so that we clarify that it will be taken from existing budgetary funds. And if there's a problem with that, I guess you all will bring it back to our attention. So, Mr. Lindsay.
I guess I'm confused now because I thought that this money was just for the development of the websites.
The website.
I'm still confused.
So for the money that we have here, when you go to www.murrayk12.org and you click on a school, you're going to see a completely different website. And you click on another one, completely different. That's what you're going to see. This is for the kit and caboodle.
But so it's a reoccurring cost? It's going to cost us
Yes.
this much every year?
Yes, and it's coming here because we have the money to pay for it.
Okay.
Nothing would come before for a vote if the money wasn't currently in place. We have the money.
Mr. Morrison.
Just a really quick question. I understand that the school messenger part of this is recurring. The website is going to cost us $20,000 every year?
I think that's what we talked about. Yeah.
Again, I didn't bring my copy of that proposal up here, but I think it spells that out in the proposal, that
Yes.
this is an annual fee.
Yeah.
And and Tommy can probably speak to this better than me, but it's my understanding they host it and they give you the permission to use their templates and you use their programming every year. I think what they're waiving, the $11,000, is what they would normally charge for the initial setup.
Mm-hmm.
But then so they will set it up for you. But then they charge you $900 for each school, each website, because we're talking about 22 websites.
Mm-hmm.
And they charge you 900 and whatever it is per year per website to be on their server to use their platform to do that. Is that the best way to say it?
Yeah,
Tom?
and also during policy meeting, Mr. Moore and I had this conversation, and when you broke down the cost, that was actually a pretty good deal, considering that he's had to work with websites and so have I in the past. $1,000 per school per year, it's not a bad deal.
Mr. Lassiter.
Well, Ms. Martin talked about the green grass earlier. Principals and board members, look at this as the way that we used to take care of our lawn maintenance. Used to, how much did it cost to cut grass? Nobody had a clue. This school paid, nobody knew. The janitor did it from over here, and this is much the way we do our websites. You know, this school's coming up with whatever they can to do it. This one's coming up. So cost-wise, when we looked at it like that as a group, we said, you know, this isn't as bad as it sounds, because you've got individual schools, some may be paying less, but some are probably paying more. And also, some of them were a lot harder to work on than others, and one of the things that this group told us is that you can add your content by having even a Word document, basically dragging and dropping pictures in Word documents. So it should be much, much easier for the people to use and set up. And, you know, it was taking a lot of time for some schools, and some schools were also paying people just to maintain the website as well, just to put the content on. So, yes, it sounds like it's a lot, and it's unfortunately more than all of us would like to pay, but in the long run, I think there's going to be some really good, useful things come out of this.
All right, Mr. Lindsay, and then Mr. Pennings.
It's the last time, I promise. So with the websites we have now, what cost are we incurring now? Obviously, that cost is going to go away. We're not going to have two websites. So,
I can tell you. So currently, right now, with a lot of the sites, I can't speak for all the schools, but basically, we buy software, we pay for software each year, which is a minimum cost. Then we have 2 people in technology to help train somebody who's designated per board policy to work on the websites. So, you know, that's kind of hit or miss. We have turnover, the reason why websites are not getting updated. This would obviously give us one standard set of training material that would work for everybody. So there's really not a cost right now. We host the website, it's at a tech shop. It's a VM. We actually, you know, there's really not, you know, we're actually probably going to free up some bandwidth too by everybody not coming through the tech shop. But, you know, there's so many benefits. But one of the things I can say is a standardized training method for everybody to work on websites, and that the new guy comes in or gal, we just say, here's the training material, and they'll be able to do it instead of us taking 2 weeks to try to sit down with the individual and get them going.
So you're saying it'll probably free up some of your people too, right?
It's supposed to, yes, that's correct.
Dr. Marzak, didn't we say that when we get this set up that we would have one person designated from each school?
That's what we work towards, yes.
Thank you.
Probably have to have a backup too.
Mr. Dudley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So we've got the individual schools, but also the central office will have a new updated site.
That's
too.
correct, yep.
Okay.
Any other discussion? All right, I think we're ready to vote on the recommendation from the committee as revised, that they will take the funds from existing budget items. Okay, ready to vote. That motion passes. All right, I believe that takes care of the community relations report. Now we're ready to move to instruction textbook committee. All right, so do we have anybody that's going to be doing the presentation? Looks like we have some textbook committee members to approve.
I'm sorry, this is
That's
just,
okay.
you have to have a vote every year on our textbook committees, and this year, we're adopting mostly CTE textbooks.
And middle school, there's a middle school keyboarding.
So I'm going to since Ms. Lori was here and stepped up, I'm going to turn it over to her.
So basically, this is just a proposal of committee members for your approval for the process to begin.
And can you give me just a little bit of background, what the process was, how we picked these particular members for these committees?
There were requirements given to me that there needed to be teachers, at least 3 members, preferably 3 teachers who are tenured. Also, at least 1 parent. And if we could not find those people to meet the proper requirements, then I would be one that would be available for that. And then we could go out into the, I believe, have a community member that's within that area.
Okay. And so what we've got in front of us, the proposal includes parent representatives on these
At
committees.
least 1 parent on each. And that parent must have a child that's in that class presently.
Okay. Any discussion or questions? Your number, or excuse me, Mr. Dudley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It just seems like there's some schools that don't have any body listed to serve on any of these committees, and I'm just wondering how were each of the schools given the opportunity to present a possible representative or like I say, there's some schools that just don't have any mention at all of
Correct.
either a parent or a teacher from their school being
And-
on any
and
of the groups.
That may be because they did not have a tenured teacher, or they did not have a program. And the teachers that we do have on there, we tried to, if we knew of a parent, we would get those folks, but if not, we asked the teacher, because they know what students are in their classrooms and what parents would be available. So we asked them. In the case of Brent Cook, we had to ask him, because I do not know the students who are in his class or the parents who would be able to serve on that committee. I believe in one instance, we have 2 ag teachers and from different schools and a parent from yet another school. So we tried to get a good sampling. Unfortunately, some schools just do not have tenured teachers in those areas. And that's one of the requirements I had to meet.
Okay, thank you.
Any other discussion? Is there a motion to approve the committees as proposed? Motion by Mr. Lindsay, is there a second? Second by Mr. Moore. Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, we're ready to vote. Motion passes. Now we're ready to move to finance. First item, monthly revenue and expenditure report. That was one of the items we removed from the revised on the agenda, Mr. Dudley. We're going to have that discussed at the policy committee. All right, so everyone received in their packet attachment number 10 that has the information, the monthly revenue and expenditures. And so Mr. Breeden is filling in, so I'll open the floor. Anybody want to pick on Mr. Breeden and ask him a lot of questions about that?
And you've already seen I'm out of my league on finance, so.
Okay. Well, everybody's had a chance to look at that. Anyone want to ask any questions or want to discuss any of that? Mr. Lindsay.
Just a comment, just a sign of good times and maybe premature, but sales tax numbers look like they were up and gasoline's down. So that helps us on our bottom line. So everybody needs to keep their fingers crossed.
Fuel prices this week, $1.73, so they're even going down further.
Mr. Dudley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm just curious, Mr. Braden, have we got anything we need to be alarmed about? Has any department overspent or anything, our expenditures are falling in track with normal expenditures?
Mr. Dudley, I don't know that I can totally answer that question, not having, been looking at the finances along, except just for the last, actually really just trying to help out for the last few days while we've been in this interim period. Dr. Perkins will obviously, she's just taking on this new role and we get filled with that. But as far as I'm aware of, there's nothing that's not, so what we would have expected. We seem to be pretty much in line with our budget for this point in the year. One of the areas, just glancing through, I noticed the highest area where it looks like that we've expended to date through the current month that this report's for is in August was the operations area. I can speak to that because I'm very familiar with that part of the budget. The reason it shows that way is because we issue purchase orders at the beginning of the year for our contracts that for the entire year, things like janitorial services, grass mowing, alarms, those kind of things. And so that money becomes encumbered, so it shows up against our budget. So if you take those numbers out, we'd be right where we're supposed to be. So everything is pretty much in line. And that was the highest one when you look at the overall budget. I did glance through and see that.
Okay,
Any other discussion or questions regarding the monthly reports? Our next item, we're ready to go into the amendments. Everyone received their packet, attachment number 11. We have several budget amendments that are being proposed to us. And so what I'm going to do is just open the floor to see if anyone has any particular budget amendment they want to ask some questions about. Yeah, Mr. Lassiter.
The next to the last one, BA 4357. what are family resource employees?
I think I saw Mr. Gaines come in. He might be able to answer that better than me.
No, we have three family resource centers, one at Whitthorne, Mount Pleasant Elementary, and Central. And we have part of a state-funded grant that's now, it's part of the BEP, and we have those employees in. We employ a family resource coordinator and a clerk at each center. Ms. Carter, I think that's it. And so, I don't know why, I'd have to ask Mary why we made that. Let me look and see. All right, it looks like we made the adjustment in the fund, it looks like we made the adjustment for their, the 2% increase is what it looks like. Is that what we did?
That's correct.
We only get the 88,000, so the 2%, we had to make an adjustment to cover their increase in salary.
Does anyone have any other budget amendments that they want to ask any questions about or discuss? Mr. Lindsay.
Just another comment, but to bring notice of the signature at the bottom of all of them, that auditors may not appreciate that signature now, since as of today, as of the date on there, she's not employed here anymore, so.
And she had already prepared these, and they were on her desk, and I picked them up off of there. So
I understand.
We can have these. I guess what we could do is we could go through and cross out that signature, or have Dr. Birkin sign those possibly today, and then, of course, if they're approved, the chairman will sign those. So we could make that change this evening. But thanks for pointing that out.
Thank you, Mr. Lindsay. Any other discussion? Mr. Moore.
Yeah, I hate to belabor that point, but that's been a sticking point for me for the last year, that we should probably not be doing that. We should probably not be dating those a different date than we're at. It's just for this exact reason, it's probably a good.
Well, I think actually what the way they're supposed to be, they can't be signed until you've approved them. And I think what she's always done, just to try to expedite the process, prepared those in advance. And then obviously if they're not approved, they're not, they're not signed. So it was just a step to do that. Obviously, they would need to be signed at the end of the meeting.
Any other discussion? All right, I did have one myself that I wanted to ask about. Mr. Briggs, I don't know if you can help. It's the very last amendment.
Okay.
It's 102215A.
Just had it in my hand.
And the explanation is to meet some sort of excess balance code, federal code.
I laid
And
it
it
on
hasn't
this
been
stack of
signed,
paper,
it
yes.
hasn't been signed by anybody, so.
Okay. The restrict for operation. Oh, yeah, this is one for the school nutrition department, so maybe Mr. Parkhurst can help us with that.
You thought you were going to get away tonight, didn't you?
It's this right here.
Yes. This is just due to the fact that we have excess funds, just as required by federal guidelines that we, as I put down below, we're required to only carry 3 months or equivalent of three months of expenses. And because we actually did summer meals through the Seamless Summer, which is part of our normal program, it actually made us an 11-month program, which then made it a bigger window. So that's why it's $749,000 or $537 to be exact. So because of all that, that's why we have to now show this is out there for us to look at putting back into the program.
Okay, so is this kind of like a fund balance type of thing where you have to keep so much?
Ceiling, right? I have a ceiling that that I can carry, and anything above that ceiling, I have to look at putting back into the program. And it goes to food. It can go to, which we had last year as well, equipment, and trying to bring back or bring up our kitchen and the aesthetics of our kids, our areas into.
Right. And so did this end up tying up more funds or or made more flexibility?
It made more flexibility
Okay.
with that one more month. And so it was roughly almost $6 million. Instead of dividing by 10, which would be 600 per month, we divide by 11, so it's just on, it's 500 and some $1,000. So instead of having a $1.8 million excess we can cap off at, it's down to 1.6.
Okay. Sorry to get so much in the weeds. I just wanted to
Nope.
ask. All right. Any other discussion on the amendments? All right. Does anyone want to vote on any of the amendments separately? Okay. If not, I'll entertain a motion to approve all of the budget amendments as stated on the agenda. All right. Motion by Mr. Pennings. Is there a second? Second by Mr. Lindsay. Any discussion on the motion? Here now, we're ready to vote. Motion passes. Next item on the agenda, we've got our bids over $10,000. Mr. Breeden. Mr. Breeden, I may sort of handle this separately and just open the floor. Everyone sees that we have 9 bids, and I'm just going to open the floor. Does anybody have any questions about any of those particular bids?
Before you do that, if I could just note
Sure.
2 things, because there are a couple of changes. One is a typographical error, bid number 16-030. It's incorrect on the agenda and on the letter that I wrote. Actually, it's the letter attached to the one I wrote is from Mr. Schuyler. This is for Spring Hill Middle School, not Spring Hill High School. We've already put this camera system in Spring Hill High School. It's for Spring Hill Middle School. So please make that correction. And then the other one is obviously 16-031 is no longer valid because you approved that in your earlier action, the renewal of school messenger.
Thank you, Mr. Breeden. All right, so I'm going to open the floor for questions or discussion of those remaining bids. Mr. Moore.
The question is for the director. In all of these bids, are these in alignment with, I guess, what you're looking to do here?
Yes.
That was easy enough. Thank you.
Any other discussion? Mr. Moore, and I also had similar questions I had asked the director prior to today's meeting to see, are these sound programs? Does the director recommend these particular contracts as far as these programs and that sort of thing, and got that okay? So, any other discussion? All right, hearing none, I will entertain a motion to approve. Well, let me first ask, does anyone want to vote on any of these bids separately? Okay. All right, so I'll open the floor for a motion to approve all the bids that are contained in the agenda with the exception of bid number 16031. And with the amendment that this bid number 16030 regarding the camera system is actually for Spring Hill Middle School, not Spring Hill High School. Motion by Mr. Lindsay. Second by Mr. Moore. Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, we're ready to vote. Motion passes. Next item on the agenda is for your information section. You'll see that there's several items, the director's report on personnel, attendance report, Facebook statistics, donations. Do anyone want to discuss any of those items? Looks like we don't have any executive committee reports, so we're ready for announcements. I'm just going to announce that we definitely appreciate all the artwork from Hampshire Unit School. Maybe everybody can kind of take a take a look at everything and take it all in. It's very, very nice, much better than what I would ever draw. So, but now I'll turn it over to the director.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. So if you take a look down, looking at the required scheduled meetings and closings, we are coming into the season, if you will, the Halloween, the Thanksgiving, and the Christmas season. So I know this is one of the best times of the year, and I'm excited to see how the artwork changes in the front here as we move through. I like the pumpkins. Tell them, Ms. Kathy, good job on the pumpkins. They did a very good job. Thought they were excellent. So you'll look through there. Kind of tells when we're going to have our parent-teacher conferences coming up, when we have our next regular board meetings, as well as Thanksgiving break and central office closing. Woohoo! Exactly. So I know. One of the things I found in education is adults are almost worse than kids. So awesome. That's all I have.
All right, I'll open the floor now to the board members. Do any board members have any announcements or anything that they want to talk about tonight? Mr. Moore.
I'll be very brief. I know we all have months that are that we announce that are for different things that the government or whoever else does. I just want to mention October is Dyslexia Awareness Month, so it's something that's kind of near and dear to my heart. I just wanted to mention that. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Moore. Mr. Lassiter.
I just want to take a moment and say that so far I've really been excited about the progress that the school system has been heading in, and that Dr. Morzak's been headed in, and I think that, and it seems like we've done more in the last month since he's been here than we've done, I feel like, my entire time on the board. So I know sooner or later I'm going to be disappointed, but so far, I think I think he's doing a great job, and I hope that everybody else is in agreement with that. And if not, I hope that you say something to him, and if you need to, say something to us as well. But I'm really excited about where our school system can go and what it can look like in the near future.
Mr. Pennings.
I'd just like to thank everybody for being here, and I have spoken to the press tonight about my statement that was in the paper. I've only been here for 7 years, not 7 terms.
Kristen, say congratulations. Yeah. Oh, and I'd like to say real quick, I'd be remiss if I didn't say congratulations to a new mom, Miss Parker. Gave birth this week, and that's why she's not able to be here tonight. So congratulations.
That was my announcement.
He stole it. He stole it.
Sorry.
Any other board members? Any other board members? All right. Here none, I entertain a motion to adjourn. Motion by Mr. Moore. Second by Mr. Pennings. All in favor say aye. Any opposed? Thank you.